Okay, we're going to go ahead and talk about some quadratic formula and practice with it a little bit. There's some notes up further on this page. If you haven't already looked at them, go ahead and pause the video, read through the notes, the series of steps. It explains a lot of different things to do, and we'll try to illustrate what they mean with some of these example problems. The first step is to go ahead and get everything on the right-hand side, the left-hand side of the equation, so that the right hand will equal 0. So in this case, the only thing on the right-hand side is 16. I'd like to get rid of that. I'll need to subtract 16. I subtract 16 from this side. And of course, I subtract 16 from the right. 16 minus 16 is 0. And everything now is on the left side, and I'm ready to try to use quadratic formula. The next thing I need to do is I need to know what A, B, and C is. And you might find it helpful to actually write down A equals, B equals, and C equals. So in this case, A equals 1, B equals 6, and C equals negative 16. The 1 is because you do have an understood 1 in front of your x squared. The 6 is from your x term. So, and since it's a positive 6, it's a plus 6. And the 16 is your last term. And once again, since it's a minus 16, it's a minus. Whatever sign with the number does need to go with that number as you write down A, B, and C. Now, at this point, I could try pulling out the quadratic formula, but I'm going to show you a quick tip that I could do to try with Desmos. So if I try putting in, let's see, x squared minus, it was a plus 6x minus 16. What I can see with Desmos is I have two solutions. I have a negative 8 and I have a 2. That means since I have nice, pretty solutions, there's no really need to use the quadratic formula any further. If I did the quadratic formula, it's just going to give me solutions of negative 8 and 2. The truth is there's a third method I could have done other than graphing of the quadratic formula. I could have factored this. I could have said, well, if I do an x plus 8 and an x minus 2, that would factor to be, that's how I could factor my x squared minus 6x plus 16 equals 0. It could factor that way. And then that would mean my solutions would be negative 8 and positive 2 would be my two solutions. So you could have solved it by factoring. You could have pulled out, if you know how to factor, that's probably the easiest way. You could have used Desmos and graphed it. That's also pretty easy. Or as a last resort, we could have used those values of A, B, and C in the quadratic formula, but that would have been the longer and harder way. So I won't illustrate quadratic formula on this one. This next one, go ahead and start by getting everything on one side. So I have I'm going to have an x squared and a minus 16x. And then to get that 64 on the other side, I'll add 64 to both sides. And that makes the right-hand side equal to 0. So I just added 64 to both sides to get that. If I was doing quadratic formula, A is 1, B is negative 16, C is 64. But I'm going to check it in Desmos just to see. X squared and I think it was a minus 16 and a plus 64, but I'm going to check it just to be sure. Yes, it was. So make that a minus 16 plus 64. And you notice it has an intersection there. Now, one thing worth mentioning is if you happen to not see it initially, you can always zoom out. If you don't see your parabola, you can zoom out. And if you go back to the home zoom, you might not, especially if you're on a mobile device, you might not even be able to see this much of your screen. So zooming out by dragging or using that minus button is a good way to see it. And I do see a solution of positive 8. So that means I am done. X equals 8. Now, the truth is this x equals 8 actually is a double root, or you could say it has a multiplicity of 2. I'm not going to be picky on that today, but we are going to start using that later this week, so it's a good time to introduce that concept. The reason you would say it would have a multiplicity of 2 is because if you were to do this one, it would have an x minus 8 and an x minus 8. It would have the same factor twice, giving you the same solution twice. So that's why you say it has a double root. And that would be, if I would have factored it, I could have gotten the same thing. I could have avoided using Desmos and factored and also got your solution. So that shows you how, even when it says use quadratic formula, sometimes you don't have to.